Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far, and after what has been at times an excruciating week of Call of Duty to watch, we do have a bracket set for Major 4 in New York. A home event for New York subliners was certainly one they're going to need to turn up for, but could their loss to Los Angeles Thieves last night actually be working in their favour? Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I'd greatly appreciate it. Really upset the channel. Thanks very much indeed for doing that one, not too far away from 80k. And let's crack straight on with things. As Octane says, online Vanguard is officially over. From now on, only on LAN, Major 4, and of course the World Championship through to the end of the year. Plenty to discuss though. Let's of course talk about this New York series. Didn't get the time to talk about it yesterday because it went on rather late last night if you guys didn't notice. Subliners versus Thieves. Big series for both teams because if Thieves lost this, they were kind of having to respond to what Toronto had done, because both Toronto and Thieves, bit of a precarious spot. Both of them winning last night was massive for their World Championship aspirations. Also on paper, bad for New York, but actually as it's turned out here, might work out rather well for them. And there's kind of been some theories, okay, you know, did they actually think about throwing away this game 5 such that they could find themselves in a better position? I doubt that's the case, but let's see what you guys think, of course, in the comment section below. Now, like, Crim and the guys came out absolutely swinging game 1. Crim was going off, like, I mean, look, a massive delay that both teams had to suffer. Thieves said that they were just losing full completely, as seemingly were the subliners, because their game was scheduled for, what, 11 p.m. my time, 6 p.m. Eastern, and they probably started the game, what, 3.5 hours late, something like that. That might even be optimistic. And they were having a hard time warming up and getting prepared for their matches because the servers were causing them issues even in the scrim. So hopefully this issue goes away at the major, because if it doesn't, like, it's absolutely ultra chalked. And probably my best bet is to actually go to bed, get up at like 6 or 7 a.m. my time, and then recap the matches, because that's probably where they're going to finish if these delays continue into the major. But still, subliners respawn. Their harp win especially has been fantastic, and Thieves somehow come away with the series victory here in kind of an unexpected fashion. Like, when New York win both hard points, you are going to expect them to find a way to win the series. But this is the thing really with subliners, that I've never really been convinced that their game 5 clutch factor is really there. Like, we've seen them win series 3-0, 3-1 when they won the Pro-Am. So far this stage as well, I'm pretty sure every single series they won was at a 3-1 up until this point, or 3-0, 3-1 or whatever. When they go game 5, they are still pretty suspect, even against a team like Thieves that doesn't do particularly well in game 5. But anyway, like, it ends up being Los Angeles Thieves tie up the series here 1-1. Then they win the control, and this is pretty funny actually here, because I mean, look at this from Kenny. He's running around, he hits the YY, and Crim takes him down like mad. Honestly, the way Kenny just runs around the map, like, watching this is like, oh my god, if he didn't do that. But you gotta give credit to Kenny though, actually, because he played great this series. I think he had like a 0.95 KT, but it was a very impactful 0.95, and that's the thing, Kenny's usually either a 1.3 or a 0.7, and recently Kenny's been a 0.99, 0.95, but having a lot of impact on the SMG. So him being more comfortable is a key factor, because if he can actually get decent on the SMG, then this team actually becomes rather scary, because the rest of their team is obviously doing rather well, and Kenny's been the kind of inconsistent force. Kenny does give a bit of an explanation for it right here, but eventually they tie up the series. New York, it goes 2-2, goes to a game 5, but Thieves managed to get the job done regardless. So incredible job actually from Thieves, because this is massive for them in terms of the context for the World Championship. They're already on 140, this now puts them on 150, but it's still not guaranteed at all, because their first rounds at the major is not going to be so easy, right? And subliners would have found themselves on that side of the bracket if, of course, things had gone a slightly different way. But Thieves take it, massive for them. Going to be good for the confidence as well going into the major, I'm sure. But yeah, playing FaZe first rounds is never going to be particularly easy. Now, New York actually come out with some kind of explanations here for why they fell short. Just that obviously Crim really frustrated with the delays, right? He says the delays are absolutely terrible, and then the AC shut off after map 1, and we couldn't shoot straight. It was so hot in there. Hate to make excuses, but when you're built like Fat 6 and it's 88 degrees, it ain't fun. Blew the Berlin control and the siege S&D, right? So yeah, they weren't happy at all about the way the series finished off, and seems like Crimsix was definitely, you know, putting his pedal to the metal to try and win this series. I'm sure they still have confidence in themselves that if they were to play FaZe first round of the major, or second round, as I think it would have been, they if of course they won their first round matchup, then they would have been in position to potentially do some damage there, right? And as Kismet says, like, yeah, apparently they're playing with someone, of course, that will Hydra tested positive. Someone also got food poisoning, and our office AC went out, right? So he's saying our resilience is good if, of course, they can play with their full team when it comes to the major, which is still a bit of a question mark. Octane actually dominates the series at 1.36, 102 kills, most damage in the lobby. But yeah, Kenny had a very impactful 0.95, I thought. And Hydra, despite being unwell, 100 kills at 1.08, only go positive on the other side of the story, right? So yeah, still, New York, honestly, it's not the end of the world for them, because as Parasite points out, if New York lose, as they did, they get an easier bracket, theoretically, rather than playing FaZe. I believe they would have played FaZe round 2, but they would have been on the other side of the bracket. And the side of the bracket they now fall on is actually beneficial beneficial for them because the teams they can beat are teams that they pretty much need to beat in order to, well, put those teams in their worst possible position to get any points here at Major 4. Of course, 4 teams will not. So this is the way it currently stands. When you're losing that series, they're 4-1. They're the second seed, which now means that they play Minnesota Rokkr first rounds. Had they have been the first seed here and beaten Los Angeles Thieves, they would have played Ultra first round, which is, you know, probably a worse matchup, I would say, for subliners. And then if they'd have beaten that one, they'd have probably played FaZe round 2. So if that was the case, that's probably worse for New York, especially because those teams that they would have been playing there are not teams that they need to beat for World Championship qualification. So this is the way the bracket actually shapes up. I'll share the flanks thoughts on this here in a second. Subliners losing that one, now play Rokkr round 1, which is massive for New York, right? Because they need Rokkr, Los Angeles Guerrillas, and the Mutineers to basically bomb out of this tournament, right? If Rokkr, Mutineers, and Los Angeles Guerrillas bomb out here, they still can make the World Championship in New York by just coming top 3. They pretty much needed a top 3 this weekend anyway, at minimum. So realistically, they needed to win both their games here in the winners bracket. But they certainly have the more feasible side of the bracket, and they play Rokkr and then probably Breach after that. You would potentially think if Breach, of course, take down Mutineers. So there's a very realistic possibility here with Rokkr that would then drop down to play Optic round 1. Mutineers would then drop down to play Seattle Surge round 1 if they were to lose to Breach. And then let's say, like, I don't know, Ultra lose to London. They then play Los Angeles Guerrillas, where Ultra are still the favourites there. So there's a very realistic possibility here, as mHaines92 kind of points out, that if the bracket goes like this is all New York need to qualify for the World Championship now. Of course, the top 3 is not going to be easy, but they have a very feasible side of the bracket. And the way the bracket's fallen for them now, based on losing that series to Los Angeles Thieves, means that they can put themselves in a spot where a lot of these results are rather likely that potentially Guerrillas, Florida Mutineers, and of course the Los Angeles Guerrillas, all teams they need to lose if New York want to overtake them, could all theoretically get top 12 here. And probably that is the way that if you kind of, look to the odds for these matches, that's probably what you would expect to happen. So the guys on the flank were discussing this and giving the ideas that actually New York losing here was actually pretty good for them and certainly more beneficial probably for their championship aspirations than if they were to actually have won that series. And of course, I'm sure questions are going to be raised as a result of it.
Before we go into that, I want to say, Tom, I actually disagree with you. So I think there's two sides of this, right? If they would have won this series, they would have played FaZe.
Right.
I don't think that's a good match for them. Do I think they could win it? Sure. I think it's a hard match for them. But because they lost, and Chris, I believe you said they ended up playing Rokkr.
Yeah.
I think that's an insanely winnable series for them.
I think it's an important series that they play them, Pat, simply because not only do they beat them, like that knocks them into losers, potentially to play another team that immediately knocks them out when they're a team they're contending for. I'm not saying they lose on purpose or anything like that, but I'm saying like that match is just huge in general, not only for them winning and propelling themselves further in the tournament, but because they're knocking over an adversary. And like I said, I wasn't saying this team is going to have a walk in the park to top 3. I'm saying if you're a New York fan, would you rather them play FaZe or you rather play Rokkr or Florida or, you know what I mean? Like that's all I'm saying.
100%. No, I agree with everything you guys said.
They only
got to
get New York's only got to get top 3. If they get top 3
and every other team doesn't lose or doesn't win a game,
and Guerrillas or Florida or Rokkr lose, like don't get a point, then they're in. And I think that's really possible. Florida's the wild card here.
So these are the standings then as they currently sit. So Toronto are now at 160, Los Angeles Thieves at 150. So both those teams you'd think should be okay. And Thieves, I'm pretty sure, even if they lose to FaZe, they play Paris round 1. So Thieves should be good for at least 160. Now, that's the thing with subliners, right? Because if they want to qualify for the World Championship, they've got to overtake all the 3 teams above them. And potentially, let's say Minnesota Rokkr have some crazy run here and they make a massive run through losers, Minnesota Rokkr do. Then they obviously are in prime position to get more points than New York. So then New York would have to hope that one of these teams above them, like New York, can still overtake them, right? Which is still possible, but the way things are more likely to go if New York actually want to qualify, and of course, look, it's their home major, they're going in front of their home crowds, they do have a possibility of actually making this happen, right? I'm just sure it's frustrating for them because they've gone 4-1 here, done pretty much everything they thought they were needed to expect it to do, to be honest, to actually make it, and then the teams above them have still won series, and I'm pretty sure they've only closed the gap by about, 5 points from the start of this kind of start of the stage to where we are now. The gap is barely any different at all between subliners and of course the cutoff line, but still, based on the way the brackets played out, it's a realistic possibility that if all these teams above them get top 12 and New York get top 3, that's going to be 40 points for New York. That'll put them on 150 and that'll be enough. But the way it's probably going to work out, they might well need at least the grand finals in New York if they want to make it happen. If Rokkr or whoever, let's say Rokkr drop down and be top 6, loses round 1, then all of a sudden New York are going to need top 2 or better to qualify. Depending on what happens happens with Thieves and Ultra. So it still is honestly all to play for. The big question is, can Hydra actually play? Like, of course, having tested positive and wasn't particularly maybe feeling great in that series yesterday. If that is the case, of course, and he's got to go to the New York Major, like, you know, what are the rules in place? Okay, if he's still testing positive, can he compete? I'm not really sure, even if he's not contagious anymore. It's a bit of a mess of a situation, right? But yes, still a bit of a concern there, because yesterday we did talk about it, that, you know, would New York need Clayson to step into the team, as he says here, any spare league spots, right? So, look, if Hydra can't play, they're for sure done and dusted. So hopefully they can play with their full roster and at least give it a good go, because they're certainly a good enough team to compete to the World Championship. Their Harpoon is the best in the game, arguably, right now. But they're going to need things to fall in their favor, but actually the way it's worked out, it probably gives them the best realistic possibility to make it that they could have hoped for, really, coming into this major. And I'm sure they have the confidence looking at that bracket that they can win their 2 winners bracket games, get to top 3, and if they're top 3, like, who knows, you know, how far beyond that they can possibly go. And yeah, lots of pressure on the team in losers, and that's the thing, the losers bracket is just so sacked. Like, 3 major winners, all 3 major winners so far this year, Optic Major 1, Guerrillas Major 2, Surge Major 3, all starting in losers. So any team that drops down to losers, apart from Thieves, who I believe play Legion, has a pretty difficult time, right? So, like, if you're Minnesota, you drop down, you play Optic. If you're Toronto or London, you drop down, play Surge. Like, yeah, obviously far from easy. So definitely massive potential here for some crazy upsets to happen throughout this entire tournament, and New York, it's still possibly alive for them. Now, Los Angeles, Guerrillas, and Slasher especially were absolutely fuming at this, right? And maybe understandably, because after winning that series as they did against London and reverse sweeping, they probably thought they were good enough to get the winners bracket. Turns out they're not, though, because the way it ended up working in the end, if you guys look right here, I thought that Toronto were chalked as well. But it turns out that because Toronto and Los Angeles Guerrillas played each other and Toronto won, the first tiebreaker with only a 2-way tie at 2 and 3 is head-to-head, right? So Toronto actually took the head-to-head here because Thieves won. If Thieves had lost, then it would have been 2 and 3s all across the board, and I think that Toronto would have fallen out based on their worst map count, because it was only a 2-way tie. They make it through, which is kind of incredible. And of course, Los Angeles Guerrillas don't make it through, and Sasha was fuming, right? He goes on to say this, want to rant, but what is even the point? This online precedent has been set. We will never get the real deal again, unfortunately. Oh well, lost a series and an event again before even boarding my flight. This is the thing. You play an entire month of online qualifiers to go to an event, start in losers, potentially just play 1 series and be out of the tourney, right? That's, I'm sure, what New York are hoping, that Guerrillas come in here after, like, of course, playing an entire month of online qualifiers, lose 1 series and are gone. That's kind of what Slash is saying, that he's lost a series already because he's starting in losers, right, for the tournament, and has no more chance to lose, or he's straight up out of there, right? Yeah, Slash are really frustrated that this online stuff is, he reckons, never going to go away. They're constantly going to do it. Of course, next year, I'm not really sure what their plan is going to be for doing this, you know, kind of a CDL stuff on LAN, or like, well, throughout the qualifiers, right? It would be better to do it on LAN anyway, because that's what happened back in the day, in the CWL days. They'd go to kind of the MLG studios in Columbus and run everything from there. But yeah, Sasha isn't particularly optimistic. He says it's an absolute joke, actually, that all the 3 major winners are in losers brackets. Just saying the fact that, like, maybe the fact that they're in losers bracket anyway from the online stuff is a bit of a joke as it is, and also maybe Vanguard in general, bit of a joke the way that, of course, it's turned out so far. And even as he says, like, he'd go on the flank and talk about this, but nobody listens to actually cares, right? So yeah, definitely some significant indictments on the CDL, but I mean, look, I can kind of understand the frustrations here from Sasha, especially after playing so well individually in that particular series. But look, they've still got a chance to make it to the World Championship, but they've got to make sure they win that first round matchup in the losers bracket. Friday is going to be mega for this tournament, and even as Arcitys says, just kind of rubbing in the fact that Vanguard is maybe not the most competitive game in the world. 6 out of the 7 last matches that have been played have all gone to Game 5. The only one that didn't was FaZe versus Surge, but every other series went to Game 5 the last couple of days. Like, if we get more of that at the major, there's going to be some late nights, there's no doubt about it. But very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy it, hit the like button. Tell us on YouTube, God, this is a good video. Others like you should see it as well. And I'll grow the competitive Call of Duty community. Thank you for watching as always. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.